Hey everyone, we are the Baby Theologians. My name is Clay Brenner, and I'm going to kick us off tonight with our introduction. We are running through Forster's book. We're in our last section. He comes to make his blessings flow. And what Forster is getting at with that, he comes to make his blessings flow. He's saying that the Lord is present and he wants us to steward his blessing. And the ways he wants us to steward his blessings are through topics like sex and family, work and economy, and citizenship and community. And so we're going to dive into a few of those things. But first up, myself and my classmates are going to answer this incredibly important question: who is our favorite Disney character? So I'll pass it off in a second, but my favorite Disney character is Baby Yoda. And with that, I'll pass it off to Isaac.
Yeah, so my name is Isaac Eldine, and my favorite Disney character, hands down, Eugene Fitzherbert, also known as Flynn Rider in the movie Tangled.
Mine is Rapunzel from Tangled, because Tangled is the best Disney movie out there. No arguments.
Valid.
No arguments at all.
Nope, none.
So with that, I will bring us into our first discussion, and that is on sex and family from Forster. So without further ado, I'll go right in. So a couple of things from Forster. He wants to point out with sex and family. He says it's important to recognize social structures, the things that are God-made and the things that are not God-made. So you got God-made social structures here that you'll see a little more with like conservative communities, which is great. And then you have more of the man-made social structures on the opposite side. You could say that they're more liberal with their theology, or a little more new age, and that's fine to say that. But Forster wants us to be able to distinguish those in a way that honors the Lord, and ultimately so that we can increase our dependence on the Lord and cling to God when the world feels like it's falling apart. Avoid treating social structures as though they were a result of humanity's actions only is something that Forster gets at. He wants us to know that social structures are not inherently evil, that there are good and that there are bad. They're not always black and white either, and Forster makes that distinction too, which is great. And so moving from social structures onto the sex and family dynamic a little bit more, the topic of sex, which most churches and most Bible studies really ignore way too much. Sex is meant to be within the context of marriage, not with promiscuity or promiscuous behavior, not sleeping around, no shotgun weddings, no premarital sexual activity of any kind. That's the old-fashioned Christian perspective, and that's something that we're supposed to honor today as believers. And we do that because God created sex and marriage to bring about families, honored the Lord in doing so, and thank God for the gifts he gives us. So going with that, the reality is that when you break the marriage covenant, or when you treat the marriage covenant with less respect than what it deserves, because the marriage covenant is given by God, and you treat it with less respect than what it deserves, it ultimately comes back on you and your relationship with the Lord. It's something that God put in place, something that he wants us to honor seriously, and we do that within the context of marriage. You don't have to go crazy with your sexual details, just understand that you're serving the Lord by being faithful to your spouse, and that staying loyal, staying committed to your family, to your spouse, to the marriage covenant, that's all something that the Lord honors, something that God rewards you for in heaven. So with that, I think I will pass it off to Isaac on his discussion topic.
Do we want to discuss anything else about the family and sex as a group? So Bree, did you have any thoughts on that, or I can also share some?
I actually did a little bit. Like you said, Clay, I agree. God intended sex and the way that the relationship between man and woman is supposed to work, like, very particularly. And it's like when you get an item of furniture from IKEA, you don't look at the like manual instruction book and toss it out and just put it together however way you want. Like, there's a specific intention and design for what you have bought and like what you have been given. So like the same way, like we shouldn't just like toss out everything that God's written to us in the Bible because we want to do things the way we want. Because he's made it for an intention to glorify himself ultimately. So when we don't do that, it's like, what do we even, like, we're not going to find success in what we're trying to do or force together, because that's not the way that the maker intended it for. It's not going to make its purpose. It's just going to make something damaging or misleading or not anything like what it's supposed to be. So I thought everything you said was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. And I think the idea of marriage and family is one of my favorite topics in the whole Bible. I think the passage that speaks most profoundly to is maybe Ephesians 5, when it's talking about husband and wives, and husbands respect your wives. Nope. Wives, respect your husbands as the church respects Jesus. And then husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. So even like the profound statement of just the idea of like wives respecting the husband and husband loving the wives is something that's kind of missed in this world. And it's not quite seen as that simply. Women sometimes want to be in guy roles and sometimes guys want to be in women roles and reversing things. But going back to what you said, Clay, we should stick to what the old Christians used to believe and how they believed it and now how we view it to this day. If that makes sense too. So yeah. Okay. Is that everything we want to talk about this topic?
Yeah.
Good. So the next topic is work and economy. Now this is actually something pretty dear to my heart, because I think for the longest time, I thought missionaries were in this glorified position. The position of like, they are like super Christians and it's like everyone else is just kind of like, eh. Or like pastors, like, oh man, they're the real deal, but everyone else, eh. But what I've learned in time and also through Foster is the idea of work and worship. The idea of when we work, just our average jobs of plumber, electrician, or Bree is going to be in theater work and stuff. And then Clay is going to be in an athletic director or something in that ball field. But these areas of their life are not specifically devoted to ministry in a sense. But their lives are to glorify God, even through their normal everyday work and job. In a quote that Foster has, actually it's from his wife, I believe, is her idea of a productive and glorifying day is when she said she produced an improvement to the world. So it's something as simply as, I just improved the world a little bit today, whether in her home at life, cleaning her house, or even devoting time to her kids and spending time with them. These are just ways that she improved the world, and I think gives a very beneficial view to what it really looks like to worship God through our work and our everyday actions. Do you guys have any thoughts, feelings, concerns? Or no?
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm planning on going into theater and just the whole industry. I've been told from like a child that like the theater industry is like dark and it's difficult to be a Christian. And that's for lots of different reasons that I could go into, but it would take much longer than this podcast. But that's honestly the whole reason why I felt called to go into theater. I think God has given us all talents that we are born with, and it's up to us to either like choose something else or to nurture and grow those talents into like strengths and skills. So that's part of my work, is to honor God, honor what he's given me, so that I can glorify him better, because he has given me the talents and he has given me these strengths. So the more that I work and till and grow them, like the more I can honor him, and the more I guess credit I get in the theater world that I can give back to God, and I can say, hey, these are like these talents I've been given. They're not just mine. They're not like they weren't something that I just have. They've been given to me, and they're from God. And that's how I got into my professional life, because I wouldn't have a professional life without him. So like just by honoring what he's given, we can glorify him, and that's especially what I do in theater. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what about, and I totally agree with everything you say, and that's awesome to get your perspective on theater and how it is a dark place maybe, and how you're going to be a light in that field also, Lord willing. And what about you, Clay? How do you think God is directing you to glorify him more through your work as maybe an athletic director or something in that ball field?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I feel like my last 4 years at LBC have prepped me for answering that type of question. Working as a working as a coach, working as an athletic director, teaching kids what it means to integrate the gospel into your athletic training, and just seeing the kids respond to that. It's wonderful. So I teach them to thank God for the gift of running, of handling a basketball, whatever sport they're in. Personally, I love track and field. That's my thing. But teaching the kids the importance of thanking God for the gifts that you have, especially the kids who want to improve in the sport, or the kids who are active on their own on the weekends. Seeing the switch turn on for them, so to speak, and seeing them praying with the team, growing more in team devotions, whether it's related specifically to the sport or whether it's personal for them. Seeing them grow in devotion, seeing them praying during practice, seeing them praying together during a competition or afterwards, and seeing them fellowship with other schools, even the non-Christian schools. It's the coolest thing, and I love it. And then seeing the joy on their faces when they break their own record, or when they break a school record, or when they reset another school's record. It's incredible. And seeing them thank God for it, for the gift of being an athlete, and then saying to the other schools, even the non-Christian schools, like, I thank God for this opportunity. And sometimes they say, I thank God that I have good coaches, and I love hearing things like that. But it's really cool praising the Lord for the gifts that you have. And I think sports wouldn't be what it is if people didn't thank God for their athletic talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a blessing to thank God for everything, even something as simple as sports. And being able to see that and instill that into young people also is a huge positive, which is really cool. And just one thing I thought of, have you guys ever seen the movie Chariots of Fire? Well,
Yes.
Okay. So one thing I know he said was, like, whenever he was running, he just felt closest with the Lord. So to him, his athletic abilities really drew him closer to the Lord through prayer and through other means also. So anyways, thank you so much, Clay, for everything you guys.
I have a question. Clay, you work in a Christian school, middle school or high school, but you talk a lot about how the students are able to like pray together and pray corporately. How, first of all, that would be very different in a public school setting. How would you like incorporate the mission of like the athletics if you can't like outwardly pray and outwardly involve God in like things like that? Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like it would be, it's easy to be focused on like worshiping when you're in a Christian environment where you're safe to do that, but like that's not the case in all other places. I'm just interested in like your training, because I know we're all in Bible college and we all probably know how to answer these questions, but like just yeah.
All right. So to answer the first piece of your question,
Yeah.
I work with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and then the 5th and 6th graders who are interested in sports. I coach them just as I coach the middle schoolers.
Okay.
And I coached 2 years in a public school before coaching at Lancaster County Christian, and I loved them both. So when I was coaching for the public school, I would allow the team captains to initiate prayers on their own. And if they asked me to partake, I'd hop in and be like, heck yeah, I want to partake in that. And then I would share verses, or at the very least, biblical themes. I wouldn't always cite the Bible unless they asked me, but I'd be there to initiate a few conversations and then be involved on any Christ-like topic that they have or any questions that they have. I'd answer it in a flash. I hope that answers your question, Bree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I love to hear that. And I think it's such a good groundwork, like to work with the kids, and especially kids in athletics who are I feel like all sorts come to athletics for as a safe haven, but then to also experience like the goodness of God and the fulfillment of his work is just such a good place for that. So that's awesome. Are we ready to move on, Isaac? Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I feel like you guys summed it up very well, and I love the idea of work and worship, and let's continue. Missionaries are not glorified people, but rather they are doing the Lord's work, but so are we, the ones that are serving the Lord in our everyday life. So I like that.
Yeah.
Bree, I think
awesome.
you've got the next topic then.
I do. So I'm going to talk to us about the chapter 8, which is on citizenship and community. I really want to focus on, well, a lot of things, but especially on the concept of having common ground. I think something that is so essential to having good community and good citizenship is to just be real with people and to be on the same level. Find those like places of common ground, because even if you have like religious differences, like there are some atheists in my community, and in high school there were like people who would oppose Christ while I didn't, but at the same time, like we found common ground and we could get along with each other. And kind of like you were saying, Clay, like with God in public schools, you can't always say it outright and out loud, but like you can work like the principles from the Bible into just your life. Like when it's truly about living by example, I found. And when you have common ground, there's common respect. And I think when people start to see all that God has to offer, it really grows the example that you give grows their faith, even minusculely, but just in general, the exposure to God is so powerful when you are focusing on what you have together and the bonds that you can form together without just saying God's name, like the things that he can bring you to do together. I mean, when you can say his name, perfect. And that's where I think there's a difference between community, secular community and your church community. And that's a very key difference. And Isaac, you work in youth ministry, so you can definitely talk about the church community. I think in this discussion that we had together online, you were the only one who brought up about community in your local church and also citizenship in that too. Mm-hmm. So can you just detail a little bit about that for us and what you see is growing and what's doing great and what's maybe not?
So specifically, like, I think I talked about how my church is involved in our community. Is that kind of where the question's going?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. So with being a youth leader at my church, I don't have the pastor title technically, but with being a youth man at my church, I get to see a lot of the ins and outs of the other youth pastors that are there. And something that I saw and continue to see that really encourages me is how involved they are in the local schools around us. So these are the kids that they're witnessing to and the kids that are coming to our youth groups. But they're going into the schools. They are eating with the kids at lunch. But also their relationships with the principals and also teachers is incredible. Like I think my youth pastor literally just has like the principal in his contacts. Like he just texts her every once in a while, like, hey, how are you guys doing? One thing that recently they were able to bless the school with and kind of continue that relationship is just bless them with a breakfast. They just gave them a breakfast for all the teachers. And with everything due to COVID, they had to cancel some things before. But we were able to provide them with just something simple that they could get together. And this was just a way that we built and continue to build into the relationships at the school. And it's really neat just to see, I don't know, the communities that they have developed over the years in the areas around us. It's not just my church community, but it's so much more that we're involved with too.
Yeah. And see, that's like, again, as part of it, the bond between the pastors at your church and the teachers at the schools, like the common ground is the kids. Like you all love the kids. And so like what you have is an example to each other because of that bond and common ground. And I just think, yeah, the more common ground we can find with everybody, the more community that we can build and foster, and then like show examples of Christ like the pastors are doing for the teachers, and just acts of sacrifice and acts of love for just people in general. I think that's something that we're kind of lacking as a world. We just don't love each other as well as I think we should. And I think that's definitely part of the role of the Christian church, that like we show the love of Christ. So that's all I have for the discussion, but I would love to talk a little bit about Forster's conclusion. Something he says right at the top of it is something that I think just explains the whole book, yes, but just how we should be living our lives in general. He says, infusing the joy of God into our daily participation in human civilization involves countless little things. There's no formal program or 8 easy steps. And yet, while from one point of view it involves countless little things, from another point of view, it's really just one very big thing. You have to develop the wisdom to build a single, integrated, whole life that honors and follows Jesus in your home, workplace, and community. So I think that's just like an instruction. And it's one that is echoed from the Bible, that we should be living our lives devoted to Christ and then devoted to the world, that we minister Christ in us to the world. We're supposed to love God and love others. And so I just think that with that, we can bring joy to the world and joy for the world because of Christ shining through us. And I think that's the only way. So yeah, a lot of little things that make up one very big thing is just to integrate and honor and follow Jesus in our home, workplace, and community. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, this has been really fun to work with you guys throughout this whole series and our little podcast fun. But I thank you very much for your thoughts, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Okay,
bye.
We're the Baby Theologians, and adios until next time, which will never be.